Akiyama can count on fireworks from Bisping. Will it be a hearty party back home? And the Hitman tries to roll through quicksand. This is the Fight Network's preview of UFC 120. Hey everybody, I'm John Pollock. Welcome to the Fight Network's preview of UFC 120 as the promotion returns to the O2 Arena in London, England this Saturday. Fight Network MMA analyst John Ramdian will be alongside to break down the card and offer his wisdom on whose arms will be raised this coming weekend. The show is going to feature no less than 8 English fighters, including the return of John the Hitman Hathaway in welterweight action. We're going to see how Dan Hardy recovers after going 5 rounds with George St. Pierre this past March. And in the main event, it's a battle of a K1 Heroes export and the UFC's UK poster boy. The main event of UFC 120 will feature middleweight action as the 19-3 Michael the Count Bisping looks for his 10th octagon victory as he will meet noted judoka Yoshihiro Akiyama, who holds a record of 13-2 with a 1-1 mark inside the octagon. Akiyama's most recent fight inside the octagon was at UFC 116, where he was submitted in spectacular fashion by Chris Lieben.
Ever since the whole Dan Henderson, Michael Bisping thing, just the stuff he said and the stuff he did, I wasn't too impressed with what he did before the fight and you know, all that stuff. So I'm going to go with Akiyama on that one.
Many fighters look for North American fan acceptance to help build their careers, confidence, and give them a much-needed push in a sport that is as much mental as it is physical. However, English fighter Michael Bisping has gone against the grain. After winning the Ultimate Fighter reality show, the undefeated Wolf Slayer product would embrace the role of the heel, and it would help the 31-year-old get noticed. Bisping seems to enjoy the taunts and jeers of the American crowds, and it would help fuel the fire, as the outspoken Brit would not hold back with his comments, and it would help create interest for one of Europe's emerging stars. Bisping's trash-talking and genuine cockiness helped his career again when the Ultimate Fighter contestant turned Ultimate Fighter coach in the 9th installment of the series. Throughout the season, Bisping verbally assaulted MMA royalty Dan Henderson and eventually paid for it when Henderson knocked the Brit out in thrilling fashion at UFC 100. The same card that Japanese sensation Yoshihiro Akiyama would make his promotional debut. Although Bisping will be fighting in his own backyard and the fans are destined to be on his side, he will be facing a man that could steal his thunder. Akiyama has faced his fair share of controversy and angry fans during his time fighting in the Japanese MMA scene. In 2006, at the K1 Dynamite event, the judoka faced Japanese legend Kazushi Sakuraba. The respected Sakuraba complained that the judo gold medalist felt slippery during their main event encounter, but the fight continued. Akiyama was awarded the victory, but after further investigation, the FEG company had evidence that the now 35-year-old had used lotion to grease up his body. The company overturned the decision to a no contest, and Akiyama's reputation would be tainted. Akiyama was suspended, his prize money taken, and his endorsement deals were in jeopardy when fans complained. The undefeated fighter then fell victim to a banned tactic himself when top-ranked middleweight Kazu Masaki landed an illegal kick on Akiyama at the Uranoka event.
These two judokas, well, they're keeping in the feet, and now Akiyama goes down and he gets kicked in the head. Akiyama, the fight has been called. Unbelievable. Masaki records the win in dramatic fashion over Yoshihiro Akiyama.
After winning a razor-thin split decision against Alan Belcher in his UFC debut, the K1 Heroes Grand Prix champion would suffer his first defeat since 2005 and only his second loss of his career when he succumbed to a triangle choke by Ultimate Fighter alum Chris Lieben. Akiyama is known for having a complete MMA game, and a fight with Bisping could be the fight that the whole MMA world will notice. If Akiyama can take the brash fighter out on his own home turf, he will most likely gain a ton of new fans and erase any memories of the Team Cloud members' cloudy past.
John Ramdian is here to break down UFC 120, and he's brought the Cobra with him. This Saturday night, we're going to see Michael the Count Bisping in action against Yoshihiro Akiyama. Michael Bisping earlier this year losing a very close decision to Wanderlei Silva and then rebounding against Dan Miller. This guy came into the UFC, had a very strong stand-up game, but since that time has really added wrestling to his repertoire and improved that. But this fight, are we going to see that come out of him?
I think you're going to see everything from Michael Bisping in this fight. I think the most important thing is that you see Michael Bisping's conditioning, because we saw in Akiyama's last fight, he got tired and he was susceptible to the submission. He got caught by Chris Lieben. I think that Michael Bisping is going to bring his A game. I think he's going to be in shape. I think he's going to have a great stand-up game. But if the fight goes to the ground, I think that's where he'll shine.
Yoshihiro Akiyama, he's had 2 UFC bouts right now. His last fight with Chris Lieben, a Fight of the Year candidate, and you definitely get the sense of Akiyama with that Japanese mentality of having an entertaining fight as opposed to just going out there to win a fight. Was doing very successful with his judo takedowns, but then chose to stand with Lieben, maybe against better judgment, but this is a guy that I think wants to go out there and have a crowd-pleasing affair.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to. You look at his fight with Alan Belcher. He's an entertaining guy. He comes from the Japanese mixed martial arts background, so you know entertainment is paramount, and stylistically the fight with Michael Bisping really lends itself to that entertaining style.
No question who is going to be the crowd favorite in this fight, but do you expect at all a reserved or conservative Bisping in order to secure the victory here and stay in the top mix at 185?
Absolutely not. I think Michael Bisping is going to go and show that he deserves a shot at the middleweight title, and if he can take out a guy like Akiyama in impressive fashion, I think the UFC will have to take notice.
So will it be a crowd-pleasing affair for Bisping and a victory, or will Akiyama play the role of spoiler at UFC 120?
No, Michael Bisping will get the win via TKO probably in the second or third round.
The outlaw Dan Hardy returns home on Saturday night. The 23-7 welterweight is coming off the most publicized fight of his career, dropping a 5-round decision to champion George St. Pierre. Originally, Hardy was set to fight Dustin Hazlett on this card, but he had to step out and in came Carlos Condit, who holds a record of 25-5, fighting out of Jackson's Mixed Martial Arts in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
I think that going into this fight, Hardy's an easier guy to train for than Condit. So I think Condit's going to pull this one out.
2 of the welterweight division's most exciting fighters will throw down in a bout destined to deliver action. The outlaw Dan Hardy challenges former WEC welterweight champion Carlos Condit. Fans had a chance to meet Dan Hardy when the Nottingham race fighter was featured on the UFC Primetime series for his fight with George St. Pierre. For fans unfamiliar with Condit, he made his professional mixed martial arts debut in Juarez, Mexico at the age of 18. Nicknamed the natural-born killer, Condit was victorious 13 times in 15 pro fights, with every victory coming by way of stoppage. In 2006, Condit took part in the Rumble on the Rock 175-pound tournament, which featured some of the top fighters in the world, including Yushin Okami, Jake Shields, and one of the pound-for-pound best, Anderson Silva. In the first round of the tournament, Condit would face BJ Penn coach and teammate Ceruto Verissimo. Condit was not expected to defeat the jiu-jitsu fighter, having been tapped out in his only 2 losses by Carlo Prater and leg lock specialist Satoru Kitaoka.
Condit very good on his feet. Oh, brutal right away. Verissimo's got to hold on. He's hurt. He's hurt with a big right-left combination. And right now Condit trying to finish up with Verissimo. That's it.
Over.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my God.
How about that upset?
That is the biggest upset of the night.
At only 22, the Albuquerque resident made short work of the Brazilian submission fighter in spectacular fashion. In the second round of the tournament, the youngster squared off against former WFA welterweight champion and UFC title contender Frank Trigg.
Should be an explosive start. Once again, working the guard. Tries to go for up and tries to go for a triangle.
There's the triangle.
Now he's got...
Oh, looks tight. She's got a slam.
Trouble here.
He's going to be out. Oh, he's got
Carlos Condit. Defeated Frank Trigg.
In less than 2 minutes, Condit managed to submit the more experienced Trigg to face Gracie Jiu-Jitsu fighter Jake Shields in the final.
down. Body lock. He's got to keep that chin down. Condit's not afraid to throw.
He tried to shoot that knee in there. Oh, pushed him right up. Here goes those elbows. Watch those elbows again. Here they come. There's another elbow.
There's the arm bar.
Gave up his arm.
Shields gave the arm bar.
Oh, Condit. Oh, he got out of it. He got out of it.
After a back-and-forth battle, Condit lost the unanimous decision, but established himself as one of the future stars of the division. Before entering the World Extreme Cage Fighting Organization, Condit would compete in the Japanese promotion Pancrase, stopping every one of his opponents. In only his second fight under the WEC banner, the proud father would capture the welterweight crown. After the UFC absorbed their sister promotion's welterweight roster, Condit would go 1-1 in the UFC before meeting Canadian welterweight sensation Rory MacDonald. In an epic battle, Condit and MacDonald put on an entertaining affair, and Condit walked away with the TKO victory, less than 10 seconds left in the contest. Now in the prime of his career, the 26-year-old continues to evolve as a fighter and now sharpens his skills at Greg Jackson's academy in New Mexico. One of the most entertaining fighters in the division, with 11 KOs and 13 submissions, he continues to move up the 170-pound rankings. If Condit can manage to take out the Outlaw, he could position himself for a title shot sometime in the future.
John, I don't know if you've checked CNN, but a war is going to be breaking out on Saturday at the O2 Arena with Dan Hardy and Carlos Condit. Let's first chat about Dan Hardy. He's coming off the biggest and most publicized fight of his career, going 5 rounds with Georges St-Pierre. Was that a case of Georges St-Pierre just being very reserved? I mean, what stood out for you from Dan Hardy's point of view in that fight?
Well, I mean, if you go back and you watch that fight, you heard Greg Jackson tell George not to pass Dan Hardy's guard, to stay inside and pound. George didn't listen to him. George kept passing Hardy's guard, and Dan Hardy would end up reversing him, but George would go back and keep doing the same thing over and over again, try to get a couple of submissions. But Dan Hardy proved that he's very resilient. This guy is a very tough guy to finish, and it's going to be the same thing against Carlos Condit.
This one I don't think is going to be a grappling clinic by any stretch of the imagination. 2 guys that I think are going to go out there and want to trade with one another. Carlos Condit has had some tremendous fights going back to his days as the WEC welterweight champion and since coming over to the UFC, most recently against Rory MacDonald.
Yeah, the guy is super talented in all areas, and I think the only thing that you might be mistaken on is the fact that he's now under Greg Jackson's tutelage. So I think that Carlos Condit may take this fight down to the ground because Hardy's biggest strength is the stand-up game.
Against Rory MacDonald, that was a fight that he was able to stop in the 3rd round. It was a fight that many thought had it gone to the judges, MacDonald would have got the Duke in that one, but instead Condit showing a very, very aggressive state in that 3rd round to finish that fight, and I was very impressed with that performance at UFC 115.
And he has to know that although he trains at Greg Jackson's right now, that a win over Dan Hardy, the UFC could come knocking for a shot at the welterweight title. So I think you'll see a very aggressive Carlos Condit in this fight, and I think he's going to surprise and impress a lot of people.
I think these guys are going to trade for 15 minutes. What do you feel is going to be the outcome?
I think it's going to be a mixed bag. I think they're going to do everything. I think they're going to start standing and eventually get this fight down to the ground, and I think you'll see Carlos Condit shine. I think we'll see a 2nd or 3rd round stoppage.
Welterweight John Hathaway proved he was for real at UFC 114, adding the 14th victory of his career to his unblemished record when he defeated Diego Sanchez. At UFC 120, he will encounter his latest task in the form of 19-7-1 Extreme Couture fighter Mike Quicksand Pyle, who took the spot of an injured Dong Yoon Kim on this card. John, this is a very, very important welterweight fight for the career of John Hathaway. We saw him shock a lot of people at UFC 114 against Diego Sanchez, showed great takedown defense and some tremendous striking.
Yeah, and the most impressive part is how big this guy is for a welterweight. This guy is simply enormous, and Diego Sanchez couldn't deal with the size of John Hathaway. I don't think it's going to be the factor for Mike Pyle, though. He's dealt with a lot of big guys in the past, and I think if he can get this fight down to the ground, use his wrestling skills, and then use his submission game, I think that's where he can be successful.
Where is Pyle going to be able to find that opening to take a Hathaway down? It was something that Sanchez failed at repeatedly back in May. What do you feel are going to be Pyle's strengths here to get this and put Hathaway on his back?
And the fact is that he trains at Extreme Couture with a lot of tough wrestlers, and I think that's going to be the difference in this fight. He's been up against Randy Couture and all the monsters that train at Extreme Couture. So when you have that confidence, and Mike Pyle's a very, very confident guy, when you have that confidence, you'll be able to test yourself, and I think he'll be able to test John Hathaway up against the cage.
And I think that's going to be an interesting question for Saturday night, how this guy can survive on his back. We haven't really seen him in that position, and is he that complete fighter on Saturday night? Who is your pick? Because this is a very interesting one.
I think it will be Mike Pyle taking home the unanimous decision victory, but I wouldn't be surprised if John Hathaway got the split decision win in his hometown.
In heavyweight action this weekend, the 15-6-1 Czech Congo will face a tall order in the 10-0 Travis Brown, who made his UFC debut this past June with a TKO victory over James McSweeney. Congo snapped a 2-fight losing streak with a 3rd-round TKO over Paul Buentello this past March. John, this is the lone heavyweight bout on the main card as Czech Congo takes on Travis Brown. Travis Brown is an absolute animal. This guy has won 6 of his fights in less than 2 minutes in the first round. I think this guy is going to be a hell of a test for Czech Congo, and I'm going with Travis Brown myself.
Believe it or not, I am too. I think Travis Brown, he's undefeated, wants to keep the undefeated record alive. He's Hawaiian, so we know he can take a punch, and he trains with Dominic Cruz and Brandon Vera and some really top stand-up guys. So I think that a lot of people are going to be surprised in this fight, and I think the guy that's going to be surprised the most is Czech Congo.
Congo's lost 2 of his last 3. Everyone knows where the holes are in this guy's game. He trains with the Wolfslair Academy. I mean, is there any indication that this guy has been able to evolve his ground game, because you cannot simply have striking at this level in the heavyweight division?
I think for Czech Congo, I think for him to be successful, he has to use the same model that Mirko Cro Cop used back in the days of Pride, and that's the anti-grappling. I think if Czech Congo can use the ground game to get back up and maybe administer some ground and pound, that's where he's going to be successful. But if you don't have that wrestling element, you're simply not going to be successful in 2010 mixed martial arts.
It does seem, based on the matchmaking here, that this is a fight geared towards Kongo's strength and almost a make-or-break fight, whereas if he cannot stop Travis Brown, his days in the UFC could be over. Absolutely correct. I think that the UFC's heavyweight division is becoming their marquee division with guys like Brock Lesnar and Cain Velasquez and Junior Dos Santos. And if Cheick Kongo does not evolve, unfortunately, he'll be phased out. All right, you are leaning towards Travis Brown. How does he win this fight? I think he ends up knocking out Cheick Kongo sometime in the second or third round.
Rounding out the main card is a welterweight bout featuring Ultimate Fighter Season 9 winner James Wilkes entering the octagon for the 4th time with a professional record of 7 wins and 3 losses against a 12-1 Mississauga, Ontario native Claude the Prince Patrick, who was successful in his octagon debut at UFC 115, submitting Ricardo Funch.
Canada is the home of a number of noteworthy fighters who stand out in the mixed martial arts world. With names like Mark Hominick, Patrick Cote, Dennis Kang, Christophe Sosinski, and of course Georges St. Pierre, the Great White North has become a breeding ground of exciting combatants. Claude Patrick is another Canadian prospect who's begun to make his mark in MMA. The Torontonian began his mixed martial arts venture in 2002 and has never looked back.
They started out for $300. It was my first fight. I was sitting in college and a guy called me, "You want to fight?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure. I've been calling you guys for 8 months." So I jumped on a bus, went to Rimouski, Quebec, and fought a Kyokushinkai karate guy. The rest is history.
Patrick possesses a strong spiritual side, and much like the former UFC welterweight champion Carlos Newton, he takes the approach of the Ronin and finds himself learning from a variety of sources to become a complete fighter.
I find one of the bigger problems, a lot of guys stay an island unto themselves. You know, they know it all. They've got their one trainer and they know it all. You got to get around to wherever you can to get the best training, and don't fall into like those personality cults where this is it, I know everything, and you know, you fall short that way.
When Claude comes to me, we train Muay Thai. He respects the culture. He respects what I have to bring for that. So instead of just coming and trying to bring all different elements, he focuses on one element, and when he trains with jiu-jitsu, he trains in that one. So when it's time to bring them all together, he does it.
As a result of his spiritual devotion to martial arts, it has allowed him to open his mind and improve not only in the physical, but also the mental aspect of the game.
I do a pretty intense mental training. Previously, I was really ready to go, like a street fight sort of thing, you know? Like, go take the guy out in 30 seconds. Every hit, you want him to be dead. He's still alive. You're like, what's going on? Why is he not gone? So I realized that's not healthy. And you kind of got to mellow everything out and just be in there very scientific. So that's kind of how I try to take it.
A student of the game, Patrick emphasizes the importance of preparation and improvement.
And I'm a big fan of the sport, so I'm always watching footage of the top guys and trying to add what I can to my game, take away the bad things, and just get better.
On October 16th at UFC 120, Claude Patrick will make his UFC main card debut and have a chance to show off his skills to a wider audience. The Elite Training Center product will aim to make a statement and secure 2 wins in a row when he takes on Ultimate Fighter Season 9 winner James Wilkes.
Well, James is a pretty well-rounded guy. I didn't watch that season of The Ultimate Fighter that he was on per se, but I saw a couple of fights like against Matt Brown. So quality guy, you know, he can do a bit of everything. Training with a good camp of guys, so I'm sure he's bringing a full bag of tricks.
Hailing from Leicester, England, Wilkes enters into his 4th UFC bout with the home field advantage. But despite this benefit, his first foray into his home country was a bittersweet experience, having lost by way of TKO to Matt Brown. Having rebounded with a decision win over Peter Sabota, Wilkes ventures into England for a second time in hopes of making this experience a positive one. However, he will have his hands full with the 12-1 rising star, who is known for his savvy game planning.
You can never read what he's going to do, so his intensity comes out to your last moment. So I like that. It's just like fighting someone in the dark. You only feel it when it's too late.
Oh, it was great, man. He's the Ultimate Fighter, so I like to be the Ultimate Fighter and good chance to beat him. Got to take some of his chips to add to my pile, so that's the plan.
It's a bout between 2 welterweights itching to climb the ladder in a deep division. Surely an impressive victory for either man will get them noticed and push them one step closer to a higher level of competition that every fighter craves.
Another welterweight bout on the main card, John. It features Ultimate Fighter Season 9 winner James Wilkes taking on local favorite Claude the Prince Patrick. This is a guy you have been following for years and making a successful debut in June at UFC 115.
This guy's skills are awesome. I know he's kind of a friend, so I don't want to put him over too much, but really if you've followed his career, you've seen that he's got great stand-up skills, awesome conditioning, and when the fight hits the ground, it is over if you don't have top-notch jiu-jitsu skills. And Claude Patrick is a consummate martial artist, and that may be the big key here.
James Wilkes, he is, of course, as we mentioned, Ultimate Fighter winner. Coming off of that, he had a TKO loss to Matt Brown and then getting a very lackluster decision over Peter Sabota. I think still a lot of questions into where this guy is going to figure in at 170 pounds, and an important fight for Wilkes.
Absolutely. I mean, he's made his name in the Ultimate Fighter, and if he loses to a guy named Claude Patrick, where a lot of people don't know, it could spell the end for his time in the UFC. And conversely, if Claude Patrick wins over an Ultimate Fighter veteran like James Wilkes, the doors could be blown wide open.
Do you feel that Claude Patrick could get his much overdue submission of the night bonus on this card, which Mirko Cro Cop stole from him in June?
Yes, he did steal it from him. Go back and watch each submission and you know what I'm talking about. But I think Claude Patrick will get another submission victory, and I think he'll take out James Wilkes, probably by guillotine choke.
When we come back, it's a look at the preliminary card action at UFC 120, featuring Spencer the King Fisher, Cyril the Snake Diabate, and Canadian Mark Boots Holst in action.